Welcome. My name is Opubo Benebo. Operating a subsistence farm has as the goal the harvest for feeding to stave off hunger through complementary and supplementary provisioning of farm produce for feeding. However, implicit in that basic goal is the preference for high productivity for assured feed for such times as of unseen circumstances. And yet also implicit in the goal is the object to plant and harvest healthful crops, hence prevailing not only a state of food availability, but also aids the state of healthfulness. On this guidance of anticipated outcome has obtained the identification and choosing of a collection of crops, the essential crops, that make up for well-rounded healthful living, on which choice crop of sequence includes tomatoes, which effects lubrication of the blood by making it, the blood, slippery in the sense of fluid dynamics, but also as natural blood thinner. The adaptation of the blood to be both slippery and thinned, or in engineering speak, less viscous, as being considered is indeed important, as the antiparasitic crops could cause denseness of the blood resulting from clumps of biologics formed of the dead parasites, on which other blood matters may agglomerate, but also possibly serve as cancer ignition sites. So, tenable rational stand would be having a crop that further aids the antiparasitic bitter leaf, which is also anticancerous, but also inhibits such biologic clumps from becoming cancer ignition sites. Onions bearing the anti-cancer biochemical quercetin satisfy that requirement of preventing such dead parasite biologics clumps from becoming cancer ignition sites. And then, of course, being one of the essential crops is the select crop of next farming activity. In synopsis, then, this episode entitled Planting Essential Crops Onion offers rational guide to the planting of onions, setting forth the general knowledge base for the planting process, the approaches to managing the crops on planting for realization of preferred harvest type, and the options on which the approaches are based for performing the farming of onions. And then, of course, the general implementation of the onion-specific farming process automation control and the management of the sunlight distributed irradiation on the onions plant for maximal growth. The driver rationale guiding the farming of the essential crops onion, therefore, has the object of growing as large an onion as possible, ease of repeat planting in future planting seasons, continual growth, and most significantly, near uniformity of produce of onions from every node of planting, so that the farming activity produces enough onions to meet the feeding needs of the dependents. So it stands to reason to aim to grow large onions. Accordingly, the approach being adopted and advocated here will consist of the steps towards performing tasks that lead to the realization of bountifully large onion farm produce. To boot, there is the need to be familiar with the general knowledge base of onions. Irrespective of the subclass of species, the plant is by nature tropical, and as such, certain common practices, however, apply. The onions plant grow well in temperatures between 20 degrees C and 25 degrees C, somewhere between 55 degrees Fahrenheit and 70 degrees Fahrenheit for optimal growth. So irrespective of the region of the world, it is best to consider planting onions when the temperature is moderately high, say 68, but stay clear of extreme heat or cold. Also, it's better to space the planting points, or where each node is supposed to grow, at about 4 inches apart. This spacing allows for adequate bulging of the onions to grow up to 3 inches diameter and widespread growth of the branches without mutual adverse interactive stunning of growth and airflow interruption. The choice method of planting onion, however, is best informed on the derivative of the knowledge of the characteristics of the several approaches by which onion planting is undertaken. Simple literary research shows that onion planting could be undertaken by about 4 different approaches. Planting sets which is the planting of previous year non-fully developed small onions preserved for planting. Planting roots, which entails planting root and cutaway of harvested fully grown onions. Planting half onions, which entails the planting of the lower half of onions. Planting seeds, which is just that, growing onions from seeds. Generally, onions rot within 3 weeks or so, and so preserving the planting materials that are based on portions of actual onion requires extra work for preservation to prevent the rotting. Further, the onion set also has the issue of some of them flowering after the planting and as such not actually bulging into onion-produced bulbs, and as such the produce from farming sets never actually matches the produce of onions on 1:1. So then, experiential documentation informs that the growth of onion by seeds provide the most bountiful and bulbous onion produce. Besides, the preserving of onion seeds for planting requires no effort. Most remarkably, also, is that the use of seeds prevents the diversion of portions of prospective harvest for future farming needs, thereby making available entire harvest for human consumption. So then, the choice of planting onion is preferably by seeds. The choice of the type of onion for planting, however, is not really of consideration in the presentation, as the approach is applicable for all variants of onions. Coming on then to the planting activities, the preparation of the soil of the target ridge on which to plant the onions, as always, is first task. That starts off with the biofertilizing of the ridge soil. To boot, towards one end of the target ridge, a 4 inches diameter by 4 inches deep hole is scooped and refilled with scoops of biofertilizers. The biofertilizers filled hole and the surrounding are watered and let sit overnight, so most of the water drains down and the soil is somewhat dry, yet sort of humid, such that the biologics of the biofertilizers are encapsulated with water matter, but with the interspecies of pores actually dry. This outcome actually obtains, even though counterintuitive, and has been extensively well documented and analyzed in the book by reactions analysis by Opubo G. Benebo. In any case, this state of wetness as the object in this circumstance to be established prevails, and though the soil seems dry as suited to onions, yet still provisions a wet context for the growth. The following day, say 24 hours later, at the center of the biofertilizers refilled hole is clawed with a hand to make a small scoop about 1/4 inches into the soil, and then into the hole are dropped in about 3 onion seeds. And then the surface is dusted over yet again with more biofertilizer, and then once again the planting holes of 4 inches diameter by 4 inches diameter filled with the biofertilizer are watered wet again. The seeds are then left for 3 days, during when the seeds germinate. Because the plants require sunlight to grow, and in fact onion bulb produce size is directly dependent on the length of exposure to sunlight, the short light onion and the long light onion, the former enlarging the bulb under short light exposure, and the latter enlarging the bulb under long light exposure. Hence, a design such as built to inhibit the heliotropism of crops is also implemented, though not explicitly for heliotropism, but more for ensuring incidence of sunlight directly on the onion plant from vertically above and for a desired duration of either short light onion or long light onion exposure. The implementation of the light exposure duration, of course, is determined by the sunlight duration of the farm locale, though there is the possibility of varying that at will with the implementation of additional technology such as may be presented in the future. The plant and soil are then very lightly watered, and activities scope for this task is developed into a process that characterizes the onion farming. The onion farming specific dynamic consists of the light irradiation routine and the watering routine, and the dynamics of these two routines both define the specifications and guide of the implementation of the crop-specific farming process automatic control mechanism. Again, PLC programs are implemented to auto-manage the plant's watering and sunlight irradiation routines as established. Harvesting of the produce is generally possible after about 3 months, but better to let the plants age for a little longer and fall over onto the soil. Then it is time for harvesting. At that time, the onions are quickly harvested and put into net-type bags and hung for drying and aeration. During this period, the outer skin then turns into dry brownish color, protecting the inner skins. The conclusion that could be drawn at this time here is that structured farming of the seeds of onion of the essential crops chosen for subsistence farming can be performed anywhere in the world and grown to yield large bulb onion produce and effectively be available to all citizens in the world, such that dead parasitic biologics can be prevented from becoming cancer ignition sites in the body and particularly in the blood. Of course, onion provides additive edible solids in various foods that enrich meals as well as being eaten alone to stave off hunger. And it is a wrap. On that note, I say to you, thank you so much for having come to listen to this observation about efforts aimed at alleviating world hunger through subsistence farming by both urban dweller farmers and emergent countries' small farms farmers. You are truly appreciated, and if you would like to get privileged viewer or reader information, or access podcasts of specialized contents, or access even vertically integrated concepts, then I implore you to join my supporter club and enjoy that privileged status. Moreover, and while still here, do please take a moment and subscribe to the channel as to be informed of the publication of every new episode as soon as it is released. Thank you. Bye. Till next